Well, first of all, I'd like to thank everybody. Thank each of you for joining me on this webinar today. So it demonstrates both your commitment and appreciation for your employees and the teams you work with. However, I'm going to go against the norm and ask that you look past the stigma that employees who report to us cannot be our friends. So I ask, for the sake of this learning lesson and for the months to come while we are neck deep in this COVID-19 atmosphere, I ask that we refer to these employees as our friends. I ask that we embrace them as friends. As a leader to them, I ask that you become a caring and empathetic friend. I think you would agree with me that during these trying times, we could use as many friends as possible. I know I could. Throughout my years of consulting with account management teams and sales enterprises, I have always preached to leaders that perspective is one of the most cost-efficient and effective business tools that you can get your hands on. But it's not as easy as some would think. In working with others, I try to make the concept of perspective as basic as possible. No one in this world will ever have the exact same perspective as you do. I could be standing shoulder to shoulder with you, even cheek to cheek if need be, and what I see out of the scope of my eyes is vastly different than what you see out of yours. So perspective can literally be what I see versus what you see, or it can be more of a value placement on what both of us see. So if you and I were at a car dealership in the showroom, let's say we're interested in the same type of car, if we see that make and model sitting in front of us, one in white, the other in silver, I value the silver car more. I happen to like silver cars. I have a silver car. So from my perspective, that one better suits my needs. You, however, might see the white one and not even notice the silver car behind it, or beside it, excuse me. So from your perspective, the silver car doesn't even exist. As leaders, it's always important to maintain an understanding of perspective, how your organization functions within the landscape of your industry, how it competes against other organizations, what your external clients feel about your organization, or how your product or service fills a need. But I think you can all agree with me that taking an inward focus, perhaps from an employee's perspective, is also critical to a well-run organization. And now, maybe more than ever, you need to think about the employee's perspective. You need to understand it. You need to learn and grow from it. So let's go ahead and begin an exercise in taking a new perspective, one that aligns our thoughts and feelings with those employees, or rather, those friends that we work with. So in this new world facing a pandemic, there's a multitude of ways people are dealing with grief and seemingly insurmountable amounts of stress right now. People are losing loved ones and family, but they're also losing jobs, and they're losing relationships and celebrations. There are greater feelings of isolation and growing uncertainty. As author and grief expert David Kessler states, grief is always the death of something, whether it's the death of a marriage, death of a pet, or a job loss. So, in other words, grief spares no one, especially during these trying times. So, as leaders and as friends, we need to understand that there is no comparing in grief. Whether your employee friend faces losing a loved one, or he or she loses is basically a spouse's job loss. Every grief is valid and genuine. So I put this slide together to represent the intensity of the world around us and that universal feeling of grief that we all understand. But once again, by placing everything in a different perspective, we are better equipped to help each other out. I live in Winter Garden, Florida, only miles away from the theme parks everyone associates Orlando with. As a resident of Central Florida with 3 children, a strong part of my life is the feeling of family connection and freedom and happiness I associate with visiting those theme parks. So understand the loss I feel when I see this. Walt Disney World in the past has only shut their doors down a small number of times for very brief periods. The last was due to a hurricane. But now those doors are and have been shut, and I can't tell you how long they'll remain closed. So from my particular perspective and my family's perspective, we grieve the loss of happiness that we experience when visiting the parks first, as annual pass holders. And it's a valid grief. That grief stems from an association each of us has with the pleasurable experience we feel when we are together at the parks. But can't we simply recognize or create a new association to the happiness we feel spending time together, having fun just as a family indoors? The answer is simple. Of course we can. It's never easy, but it can and will be done. So Once again, understand the perspective, we recognize the loss, and we create a new association to bring back that feeling we lost. Now, many could argue, especially those of us in the human resources world, that employee engagement has never been more important, more critical than it is now. Now more than ever, as leaders, we must step outside of our traditional roles and responsibilities and extend ourselves to become caregivers, become those friends that people we work with, the ones who report to us and whom we report to, need. So the question is this: how do we help to mitigate team stress? And this is what I want to go over with you today. Well, we start with transparency and open communication. We need to share information and communicate openly and freely. Obviously, we need to dispel any rumors that might be floating around. Information sharing is a critical first step. As always, with uncertainty comes speculation. It's our responsibility to promote a sense of calmness. You always want to be empathetic. You want to show continual support. Share what you know, but also let them know when you don't have the answer. And that, you know what, that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine not to have the answer. Connection is one of those key puzzle pieces that we feel we are lacking in some ways. Some feel that overwhelming feeling of isolation, even if they might be stuck at home with their family and loved ones. With the term social distancing being used more often than not, addressing feelings of isolation is important. Now, some of us and our peers work from home. Others of us report to the office as normal, but it isn't as normal as it used to be. Maintaining separate space from others, 6 or 8 feet apart, not sharing that connection of a handshake. These are all isolating actions, but we can still connect. We just simply have to make slight modifications from what we're used to. With both our HR team and our risk management teams, I hold daily Zoom meetings. I've always been a proponent of purposeful meetings. So, setting agendas and minutes and having takeaways and actionable items. Now the purpose might be shifted a little bit. Now, sure, we're in the meeting to discuss work, create those takeaway action items, which reinforce that structure and the stability of the action. But now we also just chat. We reinforce that sense of community, and I think it's very important. I think the team also feels it's important. So think of it like water cooler chat via Zoom instead. We all talk about what is happening with one another. We break it down to the human component of it. This is like a buddy system where the daily personal check-ins are the new normal. Remember, we are all friends. Make sure to remember to ask open-ended questions such as, what concerns you? And follow up with, how does this make you feel? This is a way for you to help manage a person's emotions and connect with them. Bring it back to that human element. Now, recognizing limits and stress can hinder performance. So this step is more technical in nature, and it's provided to mitigate any potential mistakes. So we see it from kind of a business aspect. First, let's all recognize that mistakes happen across the board all the time. When managing a team or department, I always like to individually bring attention to a mistake that was made. I feel that a mistake is a teacher's greatest resource. To me, they are the best learning tool we could ever even have. They provide a great basis of comparison, basically what to do versus what not to do. Our brains create neuroassociations relating to pain and pleasure. So with mistakes, we need to redirect our brain to recognize the negative behavior and then transform the new behavior into something positive that we associate with pleasurable feeling of correctness. So why do I mention this? Well, during times of crisis or fear of the unknown, we become distracted and make more mistakes than normal. So to compensate, to avoid this, we as leaders need to over-communicate and repeat what is most important. Remember, all of us have different learning habits, different learning traits. We learn in different ways. Some of us are visual and need to see something. Others can simply hear it and it works for them. Those are the auditory learners. People like me, I'm more tactile and kinesthetic. That's the type of learner that I am that needs to actually get my hands dirty and just do it, and repetitiously perhaps. But since we can't always recognize the type of learner that we're addressing in a very quick manner, we must act as if. So we need to verbally repeat the most important details. We need to write them down and then show how they can and should be done. But if all else fails, it is good to have those redundancies in place just in case. It's a great time to create a system of checks and balances. So a person to Make a decision and to perhaps initiate the action or behavior. Right now, our organization, my organization, what I work for, is making sure that all SOPs or standard operating procedures are up to date. So that's a great time to update those SOPs as well. Maintaining physical resilience. I guess every expert would agree that taking care of your physical self is vital and crucial in good times and trying times, and especially in trying times. So make sure the employee, friends that work with you, make their physical well-being a priority. That obviously includes sleep. Make sure they're involved in active movement and exercise and good nutrition. For those of you who have employees that are not virtual who report to a physical work location, make sure you do your part in taking care of their physical well-being by providing necessary PPE and sanitation and cleaning products, posting signs for hand washing and practice social distancing by spacing out employee work areas. It's a great time to relocate those workstations and cubicles as well. So, and of course, please, please, please send symptomatic employees home immediately. Along with the physical state, we must also foster an environment where the mental state is cared for. For those of us at home, exercise is a great mental escape. Walking, running, yoga, any other exercise will not only distract the mind, but also releases endorphins, which trigger feelings of happiness and positive energy throughout the body. Mood-boosting chemicals such as serotonin are raised during physical activity and increase your overall sense of well-being. So please make sure that our friends at work take their much-needed breaks and try to encourage activity and movement during those breaks as much and as often as you can. Normalizing stress. This is the acknowledgement stage. So we want to acknowledge the impact of stress. We don't know what stressors our friends at work are experiencing unless they tell us. As leaders, we need to acknowledge the existence of the team stress and acknowledge the impact it has on every individual member. We need to promote a culture in which anxiety reactions are expected and they can be managed. We all cope with stress differently, every single one of us. Some internalize it, I internalize it. Others prefer to share and share freely. Either way, for your friends on the team, try to extend an open door policy where it's okay to share your feelings. We need to create a culture where our new motto should be, it's okay not to be okay. Please also recognize that during this time of greater amounts of stress, high achievers tend to feel higher degrees of stress with it. So please act accordingly. Seizing the moment. So my wife and I are avid Peloton riders. Yesterday I was on a ride led by Peloton's head instructor, Robin. For the past month or so, Peloton has canceled all live rides that are broadcasted from their studios due to COVID-19. So for the past month, Peloton riders have been taking what they refer to as on-demand rides, and those are the rides that have been previously recorded. Still a great workout, still a lot of fun, but different. Well, yesterday's ride with Robin was different. After almost a month without those live rides, Peloton introduced live rides that were broadcast from the instructor's home. Now, it wasn't exactly like it would be if it was produced in a studio, but in this case, Robin was riding with over 24,000 other riders from her home. 24,000. Let me repeat that number. Over 24,000 Peloton enthusiasts were so excited to take a live instructor-led class. This is double the amount of some of the most sought-after live rides. Usually they're around 12,000 at their highest for a live ride. This was 24,000. So Peloton basically took the opportunity to seize the moment and redefine what their experience was going to look like and feel like. In fact, Robin said on the ride, and I quote because I wrote it down, "Character is built when we are down and revealed when we are up." Now is that perfect time when you can address the friends you work with and let them know they do matter. Their work, their contributions matter. Every person plays an essential role in the success of your effort. Now is that time to make an impact. Build your character. Control what can be controlled. In life, I've always understood that there are those things that we are in direct control of. There are those things that we have limited or indirect control of. And of course, there will always be things that are completely out of our control. To help employees or friends with their stress, make sure they focus their efforts on their controllable actions. So in my role, I coach many nurse staffing companies. That's one of our demographics that we work very closely with. Their owners obviously are overrun with work currently, given obviously the environment in the healthcare industry. They staff nurses and certified nursing assistants at hospitals and nursing homes throughout the country. A week or so ago, I spoke to one of the owners concerning an employee that was overly concerned about the facility she was reporting to. She just found out that the facility she was placed at had several positive cases of COVID-19, and she had just spent the weekend with her new baby grandson. And obviously, she was feeling very overwhelmed. She was feeling very guilty, and she just automatically assumed that maybe, just maybe, she was affecting her grandson. I told the business owner that when she speaks with the employee, remind her of what she should already know. As a nurse, she knows that she will be in environments that are contaminated and sometimes unsafe, but she was trained well to do her job. She was provided all the protective equipment to use and wear. She knows all the safety protocols that she was taught, and she is in control of everything that she possibly can be in control of, and she was taking every known precaution. So she is in control of what she can control. And it is important to remain in control as best we can. And when our friends feel out of control, like the world is spinning during this high stress and high activity time, you need to encourage your employee friends to simply stop. Take a deep breath in, breathe out, just breathe. Encourage deep breathing or take breath breaks, as I like to refer to them as. The body begins and ends with breath. So that is as simple as it gets. Just breathe. Take the time to just breathe. So with the COVID-19 pandemic, we obviously want to take the long view. There was this famous quote, and I believe it was spoken by pretty much everyone: Rome wasn't built in a day. So at last, let's remember that there will be a light at the end of the tunnel. But we must take a long view. Our lives have and will continue to change, but in the human spirit, there is a natural resiliency. We see this as a marathon, not a sprint. So always remember to be kind to those around you, especially the friends you work with. You'll never quite completely understand the perspective, but the more you care to know, the better you will be. I wanted to share with you a system that I'm beginning to introduce to the healthcare staffing clients that I work with. It can be introduced, it can be adapted to any industry, including manufacturing. Our company has clients in a wide variety of industries. This system, it's known as iCover, is a peer-based response method to help manage those who are experiencing acute stress in very high-stress, high-stakes conditions. It was developed by the Israeli Defense Forces and adapted by the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research. It is easy to learn and linked to some very good outcomes. Okay, so once again, it's referred to as iCover, and when an individual becomes completely overwhelmed by stress, they may experience an acute stress reaction, okay? They may appear frozen, detached from what's happening. They might show extreme emotion, panic, fear, or anger, and you will notice some erratic behavior. But basically, the common denominator is that the person stops functioning for a period of time. So what we're going to do as a teammate, as a leader, as a friend, is we're going to use a 6-step protocol that can be completed in a very short amount of time, traditionally under 60 seconds. Looks like this. So the first step is identification. See if the team member needs help. You want to make sure that there's not a physical reason for their presentation. Example, team member is having trouble functioning. Like I said, they may appear frozen or non-responsive. They may seem disassociated or agitated. You want to take that time to connect with them. You want to help return them to the present moment. And that's simply done by either making some sort of gesture to them, a physical arm touch, or talk to them, make proper eye contact. You could say to them, look at me, can you hear me? I'm going to pat your arm or touch your shoulder. Can you squeeze my hand? Then you want to offer them some commitment. You want to reduce that sense of isolation where they're not the only person there. You're introducing a new person into their world. You want to remind them that they're not on their own. Say things like, I'm right here with you. I'm not going anywhere. You're not alone. Then you want to go ahead and verify facts. Get their thinking brain back in gear. So maybe ask 2 to 3 simple fact-based questions. Do you know where we are? What is your age? How are you feeling? You want to get them interacting. And then you want to establish an order of events. So you got that thinking brain back in gear, but you want to make sure they're reoriented. So you want to use simple statements, explain like the what, where, why, explain what happened, what is happening, and what will happen. So we started our shift. You were doing your assignment, and then all of a sudden you froze and started sweating. Something to that effect. And then you want to end with requesting an action. You want to re-engage that friend in a purposeful action. So make a simple request to get them engaged. Hey, we're good. Let's get back to work. Let's go. And some frequently asked questions using this particular methodology. A lot of people wonder what tone of voice should I use when going through the I-cover method. You always want to maintain an authoritative and clear voice. You don't obviously want to be overly emotional as to stress them more, and definitely don't yell at them. So the emotional part of their brain is already overloaded. So you want to kind of react accordingly. And what if I do the steps out of order or miss a step? Well, in that case, you want to keep on going. And if it doesn't work, just simply restart the step. The only perfect part of this is hopefully having the perfect solution or the perfect ending. And then how is this relevant to COVID-19? Well, obviously, given all the stressors that we're all under, maximizing and preserving, worker effectiveness is obviously a crucial part. This is designed to help anybody who's experiencing a high stress reaction. So let's review the concepts that we discussed. We want to go ahead and share information and connect. We want to do that openly and freely. We want to recognize our limits. We want to maintain that physical and mental resilience, keep ourselves strong both mentally and physically. We want to normalize the stress. Make sure everybody knows that it's okay to be not okay. And then use this time to seize the moment. Great time. I'm sure you'll see on social media that so many different people are learning, new activities, learning how to cook. I've made quite a few new recipes for the last couple of weeks. Learning a new skill, taking up guitar, or at the workplace, learning a new skill, spending time focusing on something that perhaps they didn't have the time to focus on before. And then, of course, we want to be able to control what can be controlled. And then, last but not least, we want to take the long view. We've got to look at this in such a way that, sure, right now our world might look like this, but in the time to come, I can assure you, we will get back to this. And with that, I want to leave you with a quote by Maya Angelou. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. So, and now I want to thank you all. I'm not sure you'll have questions because this was more of a process-driven, but if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them at this time, or feel free to email me at my email provided there.
Thank you very much, Jason. And at this time, if there are any questions, feel free to type them into the chat function of GoToWebinar, and we can have Jason answer those for us at this time. Also, like he said, because this does deal with maybe more sensitive issue, you can feel free to ask him those questions privately through his email address and contact him directly.